What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today we're going to be doing a quick showcase on Hwayoung in Guild Wars, as well as talking about what type of defenses you should be taking her into. So if you like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and Discord server, link in the description. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The Guild Wars showcase will be later on, and it will be against TL2, and there will be timestamps for you to go check them out. And TL2 is a top 10 guild, so you get a good idea. They have pretty good gear, right? And my Hwa is not optimized at all. So that's going to bring us to the guild build, because mine is a little bit tankier than she should be as far as HP goes. So as far as attack, it's pretty standard. Most Hwayoungs are between 6 to 7,000, depending on the build. Defense, 1.4, 1.5, pretty standard. HP is way higher than it should be. It should honestly be anywhere from like 11 to 12Ks, where most people will have them floating. It's primarily because a lot of my gear has HP rolls on it. And that just is because of the gear that I had at hand when I was building her. I do have to farm some sets for her, because if you didn't know, the higher her HP, it makes it harder for her to hit that max HP threshold. And you will see in the showcase where that actually hurts me a lot against squishier units, right? So it's something to keep in mind, especially if you're someone that was considering or has similar gear like me, where you're like, can she still work? Yes, she can still work, just you have to be aware of that weakness. But that's also why Uberia's Tooth is one of the best artifacts you can actually put on her. As far as speed, with the speed build, 220 plus would be ideal. I've seen some with 250, I've seen some even higher. 240 is nice because you outspeed other bruisers, and that's honestly like the sweet spot. 240, 250 is where you can outspeed a lot of bruisers. 260, if you're trying to outspeed mediators, which I know a lot of people are actually doing, would be like, man, that's really hard to do, and you would have to sacrifice some of the defense, but that's honestly fine because she's still going to be able to survive because of her passive. And of course, effectiveness, critical hit chance doesn't matter. FRS, some people do go with 100 or a little bit higher. You don't have to. If your gear rolls some FRS, especially on the chest, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. If you can get her a little bit of FRS, not the end of the world, right? Especially because she does have the extra room for stats, especially for the substats. Just having one roll of FRS on each gear will get you to about 100, right? So it's something that some people do like to do so they don't get locked down or debuffed by stray debuffers, right? But again, that's the build. Mine's not optimized, not the greatest. Uberia's Tooth, best artifact on her, but a lot of people don't have it. Elspeth is another really good option. Merciless Gluten is another really good option. But Uberia's, what it does is it allows you to reliably kill squishy units. Although that doesn't even matter, because when you have attack buff, you just kind of win, right? Attack buff and vigor buff will make you pretty much kill anything, even if it's low HP, just because you're doing so much true damage. So as far as Guild Wars, why should you be using her? Where should you be using her? Well, Hwayoung is a unit that creates a 2v3 scenario, right? As long as you can get a 2v3 scenario where you're favored, you're probably gonna win, right? When I was actually doing, when I made the video, this is like, as I mentioned, last war. It wasn't this war, but we just she just won games, right? She just put it in and she just killed something, and then you just win because they just don't have the damage and the resources to deal with a bulky unit, right? And she gets her S3 up so quickly, it makes her incredibly threatening. And as you'll see, everyone's using her right now, right? So where is she really good? Honestly, incredible in these types of teams. Why? Well, very simple. She actually cleanses the attack buff on her S3, so she doesn't really care about Celilius. All you need against this team, I slap on a dark type unit, right, to eat the provoke. I slap on a light unit. Usually I pick Celilius in this situation. I slap on my Celilius, and I one-shot this Amaro. GG. Then it's just the A Ravi. I can tank her with my Celilius and then just slowly whittle them down, right? And then the I usually use A Ravi, Celilius, and Hwayoung, but this Amaro doesn't assist, right? She's just one shot, right? She's gone, right? In these bulky teams, you make 1v1 scenarios. Even on the bottom team, Violet is a unit a lot of people struggle with. Hwayoung looks at that team and it's like, cute, because all you're gonna do is get rid of, you one shot the Belian, so Belian's gone, right? Hwayoung just pretty much one shots her. And then you just deal with the Mercedes regularly, and then Hwayoung naturally deals with the Violet, right? Because she's so good into Violet. And a lot of people do use these units. And as you'll see, it's not just me that thinks that way. A lot of people think that way, right? A lot of people think Hwayoung, right? A lot of people think Hwayoung, right? Granted, this is my guild, so let's look at some of the people that have attacked them to see if they've used her. Yep. Just Hwayoung, right? It's just so good into these bulkier teams. They can't keep up. They can't do anything about her. They can't kill her. She just one-shots something. They can't attack break her, right? So she's really good into these type of situations, right? For this one, I want, again, yeah, Hwayoung. Why not? Right? I think they actually might have used, no, see, they didn't use Hwayoung. If this was Hwayoung, they would have won. Free as game. If this was Hwayoung, they would have won the game. Why? Because they one-shot the Celia's, and then they whittle down the rest with everyone else. Granted, probably not the best because there's a lot of damage on the board. So not the best in that situation. But again, just Hwayoung just wins, right? Again, there's some people that don't use Hwayoung. But again, oh yeah, look, boom, Hwayoung. She's just so good. She's just everywhere, right? So instead of me just telling you she's good everywhere, why is she good in the actual showcase? Well, again, she one-shot something. She makes it a 3v2 scenario, and she can kill any Bruiser unit in the game. There's no reason for you not to use her. She's very hard to lock down. Cleanses herself, so Para doesn't do anything against her. Lilius does nothing against her. One-shots, and can deal with Violet. That's all you could want in a unit. But with that, let's actually head over to the showcase. Alright, so for the first one, we have Hwayoung versus a very bulky team. Hwayoung with a vigor and attack buff, probably really good, which is why Conquer Lilius is such a good option for her. Here, honestly, the Milim is not doing too much. She was just kind of insurance against the Landy. Another unit would have most likely done a better job here than the Milim, but it was, you know, I wasn't sure if it's speed on Guiding Light. What did my Lilius miss, right? I need to make sure that I have some way to reveal that stealth. There's other ways that I could have done this, but again, we go for the Landy there because that's honestly the biggest threat. After we kill the Landy, we pretty much win the game, right? From then on, it's just making sure that we don't die, right? The other thing why you saw me S1 with the Lilius there is because, as I mentioned, my Hwayoung is unnaturally tanky on the HP, which means we're not going to get the full damage on the Landy through that Aureus. We did a very strong 11k, plus the Uberius would have done 14k damage onto the Landy, but if we had the proper HP ratios, I would not have had to S1 there with Lilius, which again, at the end of the day, doesn't matter too much. It's better to be safe than sorry. So we're still chilling. We're still harping on them. We're still doing mad damage with the Barriers Tooth, right? But now you get to see her full unmitigated damage on this particular build, which is just so much when you actually get the full HP range. She does a whopping 18k through Aureus, right? Let that sink in. 18k through Aureus without attack buff, without vigor buff. Raw. I just threw it out there, right? And I did all that damage. Right here, I did a pretty big misplay and not actually just S1ing the FCC. But again, you know, it's on me for getting greedy, because most likely that S1 would have let me live. But because of that, we do end up getting hit. We do finish off the FCC here, and we do finish off with the Milim and with the Hwa. But again, really easily able to do a lot of damage. A little bit sacrificial. This is a little bit later in the Guild War, which is why I kind of sacrificed Lilius. I kind of knew, definitely could have done more preparation, but again, she did a really good job, right? She basically solo carried the DPS in that aspect. For the second team, this is one of my favorite teams personally, and it's going to actually be the Hwayoung Hwayoung team. Here, one thing to note is we do not have the full HP threshold. So you see here, when we S3 the Lilius, we only do a measly 18,600 when we should have been doing 20 to 21k. Why is that? The Lilius is 19k HP. My Hwa is about almost 14k. We are not getting the full range of damage, and that is hurting us. Again, that is why it's so important to keep your Hwa low HP. If anything from this showcase, you should know and learn that make your Hwa low HP, or you're going to have a bad time, right? But again, you kind of saw that, which is why Barriers Tooth does help out a lot, because you do that extra damage. As you saw there with the Violet, the regular S1 only did 1000. The Uberius plus the S1 damage did the extra 5k, and it goes through miss, which is why she's such a good Violet counter, and Violet is not going to be doing anything to her, which is why we're slowly working towards him. We don't proc the Uberius Tooth there. Again, that's my fault for not having a max Uberius Tooth. But again, this seems super, super safe. Not even worried anytime through this match. The A Ravi's not going to kill anyone. The Lilius, you know, takes away the RNG factor, and the Violet is not going to solo my Hwayoung. So we're chilling, right? And we go in with the S3. This is the full unmitigated damage if you actually get the full HP differential, and it is going to be a whopping 21k damage, right? Which is, again, really, really nice, right? That is very, very solid damage onto this A Ravi. You know, one more S3 and she's gone. I don't know if you also noticed, but we already got to S3 2 times, right? At this point, it's pretty much over. You know, we just crawl S for the A Ravi, get rid of her in case, you know, she wants to S3, even though at this point we're also just tanking her out, which again is why I honestly don't think A Ravi is the best Guild Wars defense unit at this time, because she's so easily tanked. And Violet out his way with Hwayoung in the field. But again, probably my favorite team that I would like to use again in the future. For this last one, we went a little bit more aggressive. I wasn't too sure if he would outpace my damage if I picked Ruel in this situation. So instead, I decided to go with a Briar Witch Issaria to tank the Celine for a couple turns while I deal with the Sermium. So the idea behind it, if you're wondering why Briar Witch, A, it deals with the FCC, and B, it lets me tank the Ceciline for 1 or 2 turns. Here we go for the S3 onto the Sermia, and again, because we have too much high HP, we don't end up getting the kill, right? That sucks, right? The Aureus plus not having the full HP differential equals me not killing this Sermia, right? So that part kind of sucked because ideally, we would have just finished off the Sermia right here and could have started working on the Fallen Cecilia, right? So we do waste a couple of turns right here trying to deal with this. We also lose our Briar Witch earlier than we would have liked just because it ended up being too much damage. But again, they're going through, they're hitting. At this point, I'm not worried because I'm pretty sure at this point my Hwa would have soloed, right? I'm at the point in this fight that I honestly would have believed my Hwa would solo. You see the damage onto the Celine. Very, very nice, solid damage. I actually don't think my Barriers might have procced in the situation. I'm not quite sure. I would have to lab out. Most likely it was the Aureus just doing its job really well. I actually think it's just the Aureus doing its job really well. But again, really good into Celine because Celine will not cut by 50%, do barriers and extra S1 damage. So you can actually one-shot Celine with Hwa, right? Which is kind of nice, right? It is a very nice thing to do. But again, Fallen Cecilia barriers, gonna make her tankier. Fallen Cecilia is still a really good mitigation, still a really good counter into Hwa. But again, we go in here with an S1, and at this point, she's going to get it popped. You get to see the AK damage right there. And then, of course, at this point, we're just kind of chilling. So overall, very solid unit. Just make a 3v1, 3v2 situation and then have steady damage every 3 turns. Not much more that you can ask out of this unit. But let's go to the conclusions. So that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the video and got to see her showcase and why she's so good. And yeah. Honestly, if we didn't know that collab was coming in 2 weeks, she feels like a pretty much almost a must pull unit just because she's so potent. And even if she's, I can't think of this, but even there's a unit that comes out in the future that counters her in RTA, she's still going to be incredibly powerful for Guild Wars and even Arena because she just deals with bulky units so well. But that is all, and I will see you next time. Peace.